Okay, this is a summary of Lab 4.13, a best-selling video game table CSS lab. I'm going to kind of walk through it a little bit, how I would interpret it, and take a look at how I would go about solving this issue. So first thing we do is let's take a look and read through the lab, and it's asking us to modify a styles.css sheet. So the provided HTML will produce this output. So it looks like we have a table with a green header. It looks like other alternating rows are slightly different colored. It looks like the dates are centered, the titles are centered. Looks like everything's centered in the columns. Looks like we have rows and columns in a table. And it looks like that table is all provided to us. And we'll take a look here, and sure enough, here it is. Here are all our HTML elements, and if you'll note, it says this file is read-only. So that's a big indicator that we're not going to be touching this file, and as the lab said, we're going to be doing all our work in styles.css. And here's where it's telling us to write our code. So it gives us some universal selectors. We have a root selector, and we have, looks like we have two variables, right? We have a table color variable set to forest green, and a row by color, our row BG background color is honeydew. And then we set our font family selections to Calibri and Myriad. So those are defined for us. It looks like we'll probably be using those as we work on our lab. So let's look at the requirements here. So it's broken down nice for us. We have to create an ID selector, we have to create a descendant selector, and we have to create a pseudo class selector. So since it is apparently three distinct operations, let's do one at a time. We'll do one at a time, we'll test it out, we'll run it through the auto grader, and we'll see if we get any points for it. And if we get some additional points, we know we have it right, we can move on to the next. So we have our lab. I'm going to run it, and let's take a look and see what we have for our initial output. And there it is. I'm going to collapse this and try to keep everything all in the same window this time. I think we could do that. So there it is. There's our output. So let's go about attempting to write our first rule. And our first rule says to create an ID selector for the ID game table. So let's create an ID selector, and let's clear this out here. We don't need this to do. So the ID selector, as we recall, it starts with the pound sign or the hashtag, and we wanted to call it game table. We open up our parentheses, and we are going to put in there a border property. So the property is border, and it tells us what we want. It tells us we want a 2-point solid background, and we want the color to be the CSS variable. So this is where we use that var function, and we put in the table color. Dash color. And we end it with a semicolon. And if we scroll down, we should see some changes. We see a border. We see a dark green border now. So we are starting to see our CSS take effect. The next we want to add in is a text align property. So it's telling us we need it properly, and it's telling us text align, and we want center. So this is really quite simple, just following the steps and making sure we type in everything accurately and format it properly so CSS is happy. So our text alignment is now center, and it is. And we want to use a height of 200 and a width of 400 for the content. So we can do width 400, and we can do height 200. And our table looks a little bit bigger now. So, okay, it looks like we're following along. It looks like we have our first rule set up. let us see if we submit for grading if we get any points for it. Hopefully we'll get a few points. If not, it'll tell us what we did wrong, and we can go back and take a look at it. And we have 4 points so far. Okay, so it's a start. We built one rule. We got 4 points out of 10. And here's the test that passed. It tells us we have the selector created properly. It tells us we have the rule elements created properly. But we're missing all the other stuff. So, well, let's go back and add the other stuff. Now we know we have the ID selector. We can move on to the next rule. So now we need to create a descendant selector. So I'll give you a second to think about what a descendant selector looks like. So the descendant selector, and it says targets the caption inside the table. So table and then caption would be our descendant selector. So a caption inside a table. And we'll put our curly bracket in there. And we want to use the text transform property to make everything uppercase. Okay, well the property is text transform. And the property's value would be uppercase. And we could see the title changed. Let's take this rule out just so we could see. See how it was lowercase? It's lowercase now, the best-selling video games, right here on the top. And if we put our caption back in, it's now uppercase. So we can see the CSS taking effect. We haven't touched the web page at all. We haven't touched the HTML at all. But we are certainly affecting the styling. Next, we want to set the background color. Well, background color we've been using all along. And this time we want to use a table color variable. So again, it's var dash dash table color. Oh, and there we have the nice green heading now. We want to set the font color to white. And we want to set the padding to 10 px. So we can do color white. And we can do padding, which is part of the CSS box, the box model. We could set the padding to 10 px. So now we have the big heading that we saw in our example with the white text on the green background. Looks pretty good. I think we have a few more points if we run our lab. Let's take a look, give it a try. The AutoGrader is doing its magic, and I would hope we have a little more than 4 points this time. Okay, 8 out of 10. So we're close. We only have a few more points to get. We need to create a pseudo selector. So let's see what the requirements are for our pseudo selector. A pseudo class selector, nth child is even for TR. So I'll give you a second to take a look to see what a pseudo selector is. You could pause it here, go take a look and come back. Okay, so the pseudo selector for a table row, so remember it starts with a TR for table row. That's your element that you want to work on. And now we want to work on the nth child even. So we're going to look at every even row, and that's going to change that alternating white and light green coloring that we saw. Well, honeydew coloring that we're going to see. And we're going to use the background color again, and we're going to set it to the variable. Oops, not variable, var, row bg color. And now we should see the alternating light green and white rows that we saw in our example. And it looks very similar. I think it looks exact. Let's run the AutoGrader on it with the submit for grading and see how that comes out. Hopefully we'll get a 10 out of 10, and then we can move on. sure enough, there it is. So our order grader examined our CSS file. It saw that we built it out properly, gave us the full credit. So a very straightforward lab. It gives us all these rules that we need to do. We may just need to look up what the selector we want to use is and the syntax for the different properties. Other than that, just follow along what it says, break it down piece by piece, test little pieces at a time. In this case, we were able to test the individual rules one at a time. We could see that as we got them correct, we got the points that we needed, and we can then be confident moving on to the following rules that we're good to go. Okay, so that's it for this video. Hope it helps, and I will see you next time.